Imagine a glowing red countdown clock just floating right above your head.
Oh man, that is an intensely terrifying image to start with.
Right. But just picture it. It is ticking down second by second, showing the exact number of Tuesdays, that you have left to live.
Yeah, that would definitely change your morning routine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you could see that number dropping in real time, what is the very first thing on your calendar for this week that you would immediately cancel?
Oh wow. Uh, Probably a lot of things, to be honest.
Like what meeting, what obligation, what social event would suddenly feel just utterly ridiculous to attend?
It forces a really brutal level of clarity, doesn't it?
It really does.
Because when the abstraction of time is suddenly rendered completely concrete,
Hmm.
all the things we tolerate out of, politeness or habit, they are instantly exposed as just terrible investments.
And that is the exact uncomfortable clarity we're chasing today.
We are going right for it.
We really are. So if you are listening to this right now, consider this your initiation into what might be, honestly, the most intense 14 words we have ever analyzed on a deep dive.
It really is a masterclass in brevity.
Totally. The quote is from Steve Jobs, and it goes like this. Your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life.
Such a famous line.
Right, and I know what you might be thinking listening to this. You have seen this on motivational posters in corporate break rooms.
Or overlaid on a sunset on Instagram.
Exactly. Heavily filtered Instagram posts. It is perilously close to becoming just a cultural cliche.
Yeah, it gets watered down.
But our mission today is to essentially rescue this sentence from the throw pillows of the world.
I love that. Save it from the throw pillows.
We have to. Because we are going to treat these 14 words not as a platitude, but as a deeply functional, aggressively practical operating system for your daily life.
And, treating it as an operating system means we have to break down its actual architecture.
Right.
What Jobs did here is construct a masterful piece of linguistic engineering.
It really is like a highly compressed zip file.
Oh, that is a great way to put it.
Like, it looks tiny on the surface, just 14 words, but once you unpack it, there is this overwhelming amount of data inside.
Yeah, data about human psychology, priority management, existential urgency. He takes the grand, often paralyzing reality of human mortality, and he builds this direct causal bridge.
Using the word so, right?
Exactly, using the word so to connect it straight into the mundane choices you make on a random Tuesday morning.
He connects the existential to the administrative.
That is exactly what it is.
I love that phrasing, connecting the existential to the administrative, because it means we aren't just philosophizing today.
No, we are getting practical.
We are talking about how you manage your inbox and, frankly, who you choose to disappoint.
Yes, which is the hardest part.
So let's break this down into its three core components. I want to start with the first 5 words, which establish the ultimate boundary condition for this entire philosophy.
Your time is limited.
Exactly. Your time is limited.
It is the ultimate constraint. And historically, human beings have a very complicated relationship with constraints.
I mean, we tend to view them as completely oppressive.
We do. When someone points out that a resource is finite, the default emotional reaction is just scarcity and fear.
Which is why bringing up mortality usually totally kills the mood at a dinner party.
Yeah, people don't love it.
It feels grim. It feels like a dark cloud hovering over everything you were trying to accomplish.
But if we are reading the intention behind these words correctly, this isn't meant to be a morbid reminder at all.
Right. It doesn't feel like an invitation to despair.
I would actually argue it is the exact opposite. Acknowledging this limitation operates as a neurological activating function.
Okay, an activating function. Tell me more about that.
Well, it is a mechanism deliberately designed to wake you up. To understand how this works, we have to look at how we conventionally define saving time in our modern culture.
Oh, this is a huge topic.
Right. If you tell an ambitious professional that they need to save time, their immediate instinct is to seek out efficiency.
Oh, I am completely guilty of this.
We all are.
You look for ways to do the exact same things you are already doing, just slightly faster.
Exactly.
You download a new calendar app that color codes your entire life. You listen to audiobooks at like 2x speed.
Or 3x if you are really stressed.
Yeah. You eat a protein bar at your desk while simultaneously answering emails and, I don't know, listening in on a conference call.
Multitasking to the extreme.
You are essentially trying to bend the laws of physics to squeeze 65 minutes of activity into a 60-minute hour.
But look at the hidden cost of that speed.
What do you mean?
Well, you are increasing the velocity of your life, but you aren't fundamentally questioning the trajectory.
Oh, wow. Velocity versus trajectory.
Yeah, you aren't asking if the activities themselves possess any inherent value. Jobs' framework introduces a completely different paradigm here.
Because he implies that true time saving doesn't come from efficiency.
Right. It comes from effectiveness. And effectiveness requires ruthless elimination.
So efficiency is doing things right, but effectiveness is doing the right things.
Bingo.
I think I see where this is going. If the resource of time is definitively like if you literally cannot manufacture a 25th hour in the day,
Which you can't.
right, then saving time doesn't mean finding 5 extra minutes in your afternoon to just do more work.
No. Saving time means entirely opting out of activities, obligations, and pursuits that do not belong to your own life.
It is the practice of subtraction,
It is entirely about subtraction.
which means the ultimate time-saving hack isn't a better scheduling software.
Not at all.
It is a beautifully executed, totally unapologetic no.
That is the core of it. When you deeply internalize the strict limitation of your hours, the threshold for what actually gets onto your calendar becomes extraordinarily high.
Because you realize you can't afford to waste it.
Exactly. You stop trying to optimize the things you shouldn't be doing in the first place. You stop trying to efficiently climb a hill that you don't even want to be on.
Okay, I want to dig into why this is so difficult for us to actually practice.
Because it is incredibly hard.
Right. Intellectually, everybody listening to this knows that time is limited.
Sure.
We all know we are going to die. No one is confused about the basic biological reality of human existence.
Right, the mortality rate is hovering right around 100%.
Exactly. Yet, if you look at how we behave on a random Wednesday, we act as though we possess this infinite reservoir of days.
We act like we have all the time in the world.
We literally use the phrase time to kill. Why is there such a massive gap between what we logically know and how we actually act?
To answer that, we have to look at the psychological concepts governing human behavior.
Okay, lay it on me.
Specifically, there is something called construal level theory.
Construal level theory.
Yeah. This theory explains how the human brain processes psychological distance.
What kind of distance? Like physical distance?
It can be physical, but in this case, temporal distance, time.
Okay.
When something is immediate and tangible, like, say, an angry email from your boss or a buzzing notification on your phone, your brain processes it at a very low construal level.
Meaning what, exactly?
Meaning it feels concrete, it feels urgent, highly detailed, and immediate.
So the brain treats the immediate annoyance as this massive, screaming threat.
Yes. But when something is distant in time, like our eventual mortality or even our long-term life satisfaction, the brain processes it at a high construal level.
So it feels totally different.
Completely different. It treats it as abstract, fuzzy, and non-urgent.
Wow.
The brain is essentially this incredibly efficient machine that prioritizes immediate, tangible stimuli over distant, theoretical concepts.
Which perfectly explains why the noise of the present so easily drowns out the reality of the big picture.
Exactly. Furthermore, we suffer from something called the planning fallacy.
Oh, I think I have that.
We all do. We are biologically wired to be overly optimistic about how much time we have in the future.
Oh, yeah, like when you tell yourself, I will be less busy next month.
Right, or I will finally start writing that book when things calm down at work.
But of course, the future is just as crowded as the present.
Always. But because the exact end date of our life is unknown, because there is no literal expiration date stamped on our wrists, the brain treats the limitation as a non-urgent data point.
So if you knew, let's say, you had exactly 4,322 days left to live, the abstraction just vanishes.
Completely. The construal level drops to zero.
You would behave radically differently today because the limit is no longer this fuzzy, distant concept.
By stating your time is limited right up front, Jobs is asking us to manually override that biological wiring.
He's demanding that we take that abstract, distant reality of our timeline and drag it forcefully into the present moment.
Yes, because by keeping this limitation at the forefront of your mind, it acts as an automatic filter. The noise just naturally gets filtered out.
Okay, I am going to push back here for a second.
Go for it.
Because if I'm listening to this right now, I might be feeling a little bit of resistance.
Sure. That makes sense.
Doesn't constantly thinking about how our time is running out just lead to crushing anxiety rather than incredible focus?
That is a very common concern.
I am thinking about the mechanics of a video game.
Okay.
You are playing a level, exploring a digital world, taking your time, enjoying the scenery.
Right.
But then suddenly, a giant red countdown clock appears at the top of the screen.
Oh.
60 seconds, 59 seconds, 58 seconds.
And the music speeds up.
Yes. The music gets frantic.
Mhm.
In my experience, the timer doesn't make you a better player.
Usually it makes you much worse.
It makes you panic. You start making terrible decisions. You run into walls. You drop your items. You frantically push the wrong buttons.
You lose all your strategy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So how do we use this limited aspect as a functional tool rather than just a massive stressor that makes us, panic play our own lives?
That is a phenomenal analogy, and it highlights the exact danger of misinterpreting this framework.
Okay, so where is the misinterpretation?
If you view the limitation as a ticking bomb, it will absolutely induce paralysis or frantic, useless motion.
Huh.
We have to change the metaphor completely.
From a bomb to what?
We shouldn't look at the limitation as a frantic video game timer. We need to view it as a budget.
A budget.
Yes.
So we are shifting from a paradigm of speed to a paradigm of allocation.
Exactly. Consider how a financial budget operates.
Okay.
When you sit down, look at your bank account, and recognize that you have a strictly limited amount of money for the month, does that make you panic and run out to impulsively buy terrible things?
Well, no. The reality of the limit actually slows me down.
Right.
It makes me stop and think, do I really need to order takeout again tonight, or should I buy groceries so I can actually afford that concert ticket next weekend?
It forces a pause.
It really does.
The financial limitation forces you to spend your money only on what you genuinely value. It clarifies your priorities by stripping away the illusion of infinite resources.
It moves you from impulsive spending to intentional investing.
And a temporal budget, a time budget, works the exact same way.
A temporal budget. I love that. That completely changes the emotional resonance of the quote for me.
Doesn't it? When you acknowledge that your temporal budget is strictly limited, it doesn't mean you have to rush around trying to accomplish 50 things before noon.
Right.
It means you become incredibly discerning about what you purchase with your hours.
You stop spending your time on cheap, unfulfilling distractions.
And you start investing it in your authentic goals. The limitation isn't the source of anxiety, it is the source of clarity.
It is the boundary that gives your choices meaning.
Precisely.
It is not hurry up and do everything. It is slow down and choose carefully.
Yes.
If time is a capped currency, then every single hour you spend is an irreversible transaction.
Which brings us perfectly to the hinge of this entire philosophy.
Okay, let's go there.
Because if time is a budget, the immediate terrifying question becomes, what does a terrible investment actually look like?
And that takes us to the second segment of the quote, the connective tissue. So don't waste it.
Yes.
Jobs uses the word "so" to connect the reality of the limited budget directly to the concept of waste. He sets up the stakes.
What is deeply illuminating here is how the quote implicitly defines what wasting time actually means.
By making very clear what it's not, right?
Exactly.
Because when society talks about wasting time, we almost always default to physical inactivity.
We picture couch surfing.
Yeah, we picture someone lying on the couch for 6 hours, binge-watching a reality TV show, or staring out the window, or, I don't know, taking a long nap in the middle of a Tuesday.
The cultural definition of waste is pretty much synonymous with leisure, rest, or unproductivity.
But when you look at the second half of Jobs' sentence, that is not how he defines it at all.
He fundamentally detaches the concept of waste from the concept of rest.
Which is huge.
It is. In fact, physiological and psychological rest are required components of a sustainable, well-lived life.
So if waste isn't resting, what is it?
He defines waste as a misallocation of identity.
A misallocation of identity. That is heavy.
It is.
So the waste isn't about what your hands are doing. It's about who your underlying framework is serving.
He is pointing at the most insidious trap of modern professional life.
Why is it insidious?
Because passive waste, the couch surfing is obvious, you know you were doing it.
Right, nobody accidentally binge watches 10 hours of television.
Exactly. The kind of waste this framework warns against is heavily disguised as success.
Oh.
It is the rigorous, exhausting, highly disciplined pursuit of the wrong objective.
Active waste.
Yes.
That is a truly terrifying concept because it means you can feel incredibly productive while simultaneously squandering your entire temporal budget.
We have developed a societal defense mechanism where we conflate busyness with purpose.
We just crave the dopamine hit of checking items off a to-do list.
Even if it is entirely the wrong list.
Right.
You can work 80 hours a week. You can be a marvel of modern efficiency. You can answer every email within 3 minutes.
You can get promoted.
You can secure the corner office and hit every single key performance indicator your company sets for you. But if the underlying architecture of that entire career path is misaligned with your actual authentic self,
If you were doing it just to please your parents or impress your peers or maintain a certain social status,
then this framework classifies every single one of those 80 hours a week as completely wasted.
man, it is the illusion of forward momentum.
Exactly what it is.
I think about this like someone meticulously restoring a vintage car.
Okay, I like this.
Imagine a guy who spends 5 years in his garage. He sources incredibly rare parts from overseas.
Dedicating all his weekends to it.
Right. He spends thousands of hours polishing the engine, perfecting the transmission, hand-stitching the leather seats.
He invests an unbelievable amount of time, money, and energy into this machine.
It is a masterpiece of efficiency and dedication. It runs flawlessly.
A monumental effort.
But then he finally finishes,
Yeah.
he rolls it out of the garage, and he realizes he lives on a tiny island with absolutely no roads,
Oh, man.
only sand and dense jungle.
He optimized perfectly for the wrong environment.
Yes, all of that incredible effort, all of that late-night dedication yielded a result that is functionally useless to his actual environment.
He built an identity, the master mechanic, that doesn't serve his reality.
Exactly. To waste your time passively takes zero energy. But to waste your time actively, to build a whole life that doesn't belong to you, that takes a monumental amount of effort.
It is exhausting.
It is so exhausting.
It is exhausting because you are constantly fighting the friction of your own internal misalignment.
You are burning massive amounts of cognitive energy just suppressing your actual desires in order to maintain the facade of the template you adopted.
The tragedy of the vintage car on the roadless island perfectly illustrates the danger here. You spent your limited temporal budget building a vehicle you can literally never drive.
And according to this 14-word zip file we are unpacking, all of that efficiency was a catastrophic misallocation.
Which begs the final ultimate question.
What's that?
If you are building a car for an island with no roads, who gave you the blueprints?
Oh.
Why did you think building a car was the right thing to do in the first place?
And that drops us right into the third and final section of our analysis.
Here we go.
We have established that time is a strictly limited budget.
Check.
We have established that actively wasting that time means optimizing for the wrong environment.
Check.
Now we must confront the final warning: living someone else's life.
This is the core diagnostic tool of the entire operating system.
So let's get incredibly practical for the listener here.
Let's do it.
Before you finish your commute or your workout today, how do you actually identify if you are caught in this trap?
It's a tough thing to spot.
Because what does it actually mean to pursue your own goals versus living someone else's life? People don't wake up in the morning, look in the mirror and say, I am going to actively live a fraudulent life today.
No, nobody does that.
It is much more subtle, much more incremental than that, right?
It is extraordinarily subtle because it almost always begins as a deeply biological desire for safety, approval, and belonging.
So it's wired into us.
Completely.
Hmm.
To understand why we so easily slip into living someone else's life, we have to look at the evolutionary psychology of the human herd.
The herd mentality.
Yes, human society is entirely built on templates.
Templates.
From an evolutionary standpoint, following a pre-existing template is incredibly safe.
Because if you don't follow it,
Well, for thousands of years, if the herd was moving in one direction and you decided to just wander off into the woods alone, you died.
right, you were eaten by a predator or you starved to death.
Our neurological wiring evolved to punish deviation and reward conformity.
So when we adopt someone else's template, we are actually just following our biological programming to stay alive.
Precisely. When you follow the established social template, when you get the standard degree, pursue the standard career path, buy the standard house, adopt the standard opinions society rewards you.
You get a steady hit of dopamine.
Exactly. People clap for you. Your parents brag about you to their friends. Your peers validate you.
It feels warm, and more importantly, it feels physically safe.
But striking out on your own, That triggers a completely different chemical reaction.
I can imagine.
Striking out to pursue deeply personal, untemplated goals requires massive emotional friction.
It is cold outside the herd.
Very cold. When you tell your social circle that you are leaving a stable, lucrative law practice to, say, start an experimental nonprofit or to become a woodworker, society does not throw you a party.
No, they definitely don't. They look at you with concern.
The neurological response is a huge spike in cortisol, the stress hormone.
Your brain is literally telling you that you are risking social death by deviating from the accepted blueprint.
It interprets social risk as physical danger.
So when we talk about examples of living someone else's life, we're really talking about the different ways we succumb to that desire for safety.
That's the root of it.
Let's map out what this looks like in the real world. What are the most common templates we adopt?
Let's start with the most primal source: familial expectation.
Oh, family.
Living someone else's life frequently manifests as fulfilling the unlived ambitions or the rigid career expectations of your parents.
Give me an example.
Imagine a student who comes from a multi-generational family of physicians.
Okay.
From the time they are a toddler, their intelligence is praised explicitly in the context of medicine.
You're going to be a great doctor, just like your dad.
Exactly. The implicit message ingrained in their psyche is, you are valuable because you will be a great doctor one day.
And what happens if that student secretly possesses a profound, undeniable passion for, I don't know, architecture or early childhood education?
The weight of the familial expectation feels like a life or death mandate.
Because it's tied to love.
Right. If they choose architecture, they risk disappointing the people they depend on for fundamental love and approval.
That cortisol spike is just too terrifying to face for an 18-year-old.
So they conform, they go to pre-med, they suffer through organic chemistry,
They push themselves through grueling residencies.
and they become a doctor.
They achieve success by every external, measurable metric.
They are saving lives, they are respected in the community, they are financially secure.
But internally,
Internally, they are running on an operating system designed by their parents.
they're the vintage car on the roadless island.
Exactly. According to Jobs' metric, despite the prestige, if the path is misaligned with their authentic self, it is categorized as a waste of their limited temporal budget.
That is a brutally uncompromising standard.
It pulls no punches.
But it's not just parents, right? As we get older, the pressure shifts from the family to the peer group.
Oh, absolutely.
The peer pressure doesn't end in high school, it just gets better funding.
That is a great way to put it. It evolves into adopting the markers of success dictated by your social circle and, frankly, the algorithm of your social media feeds.
Yes, the feeds.
You look around and see that everyone in your professional cohort is buying a specific style of house in a specific suburb.
They're driving a certain brand of electric vehicle.
They are taking vacations to the exact same curated destinations and posting the exact same aesthetic photos.
And without even making a conscious choice, those external markers become your internal goals.
You start striving for the massive suburban house, not because you genuinely enjoy maintaining a half-acre lawn or commuting an hour each way,
Which sounds miserable, honestly.
but because it is the accepted currency of success in your specific tribe.
You are playing a game you don't even enjoy, simply because everyone around you is keeping score.
You are trading your highly limited temporal budget for a trophy you don't even want, just so other people will acknowledge that you won.
That is so bleak. And I imagine this happens constantly in the workplace, too.
Oh, everywhere.
The corporate escalator.
The corporate escalator is perhaps the most passive way we end up living someone else's life.
Walk me through that.
You take an entry-level job. The corporate structure clearly lays out the template. If you hit these metrics, in 2 years, you become a manager. In 5 years, a director. In 10 years, a VP.
It provides total certainty
It is incredibly seductive.
because you don't have to think about what's next.
Right. Now, you might absolutely despise managing people. You might find administrative oversight soul-crushing.
You might only truly feel alive when you are doing the deep, creative, individual contributor work.
But because the template is there, and because it promises incremental increases in status and salary, you simply step onto the escalator.
You let the corporate hierarchy dictate the ambition of your life.
You stop asking, what do I want to build? And start asking, what do I need to do to get to the next floor?
So if the family pressure, the peer pressure, and the corporate escalator are all designed to keep us safely within the herd, what is the alternative?
You have to step up.
How does someone actually go about pursuing their own goals. How do you break the template?
Pursuing your own goals requires a rigorous, almost ruthless internal audit.
A ruthless internal audit.
Yes, it requires you to step off the escalator, put down the blueprints handed to you by society, and face the uncomfortable silence of asking, why do I actually want this?
That sounds simple, but I suspect it is one of the hardest questions a human being can try to answer.
It is agonizing.
Why?
Because defining success entirely on your own terms guarantees that you will look irrational, unsuccessful, or even foolish to the outside world.
So it brings back that social friction.
A ton of it. Pursuing your own goals might mean turning down the prestigious promotion to VP because you value having dinner with your kids every single night more than you value the title.
And to the corporate herd, that looks like a severe lack of ambition.
Exactly. Or it might mean living in a much smaller apartment than your peers so you can self-fund an independent business venture that everyone in your social circle thinks is doomed to fail.
To the peer group, that looks like financial regression.
Yes.
It means you have to become completely comfortable being misunderstood by people who are still operating on the standard societal templates.
You have to create your own metric for success and accept that no one else is going to validate it for you.
You become the sole arbiter of your temporal budget's value.
That's it. That's the secret.
Okay, I want to challenge this concept a bit because my brain naturally searches for the gray area.
Bring it on.
Is it really truly possible to have a 100% original goal?
That's a great question.
Because aren't all of our desires, to some extent, shaped by the people we admire, the society we live in, the art we consume?
Of course they are.
Like if I decide I want to be a novelist because I grew up reading Hemingway and Toni Morrison, am I just living their lives?
No, not necessarily.
Where is the line drawn between being deeply inspired by someone else and the danger of letting someone else's life? If we take this too far, it sounds like we all need to live in a vacuum.
That is a vital distinction to make, and it gets right to the heart of practical application.
Okay.
The framework Jobs provides is not suggesting that you must exist in a sterile vacuum, completely divorced from human history and culture. Right? It does not forbid you from having mentors, studying historical figures, or adopting best practices from industry leaders.
Okay, that's a relief. Because inventing everything from scratch sounds exhausting and incredibly inefficient.
It would be impossible.
Right.
The distinction lies in the difference between gathering inputs and executing an outcome.
Gathering inputs versus executing an outcome.
Inspiration is an input. Execution must be personalized.
Oh.
The danger is not in learning from others. The danger is adopting their blueprint wholesale without running it through the filter of your own authentic values.
Inspiration is an input. Execution must be personalized. I want to make sure I fully grasp the mechanics of that.
Let's use analogy.
Please, break down the difference between being inspired by a blueprint and adopting it wholesale.
Let's look at it through the lens of culinary arts.
I love food analogies.
Who doesn't?
Mm-hmm.
Imagine you have the opportunity to visit an incredibly famous Michelin-starred restaurant.
Okay, I'm there.
The head chef is a master of their craft, and they serve you their signature dish, let's say, a profoundly complex, perfectly balanced seafood risotto.
Sounds amazing.
It is universally praised by critics. It is an undeniable masterpiece.
A pinnacle of achievement in that field.
Now, if your personal goal is to become a chef, you can absolutely look at that dish and study it intensely.
You can take notes.
Exactly. You can analyze the technique they use to develop the flavor profile. You can study how they balance the acidity of the wine with the richness of the butter.
You can observe their heat control and their plating aesthetics.
You are gathering inspiration. You are taking inputs from a master. You are learning the universal tools of the trade.
You are studying the physics of cooking.
Precisely. But living someone else's life would be taking that chef's exact recipe for that exact seafood risotto and forcing yourself to cook it every single day.
Right.
Furthermore, it would be forcing yourself to eat it every single night, desperately trying to convince yourself that you love it, even though you secretly possess a mild allergy to shellfish and your actual authentic passion is baking French pastries.
Oh, man. That makes it so clear.
Right.
You adopted the master's blueprint wholesale, simply because it came stamped with the external approval of the Michelin Guide.
You didn't run the inputs through your own internal filter. You let the external validation override your internal reality.
Wow.
Pursuing your own goals means having the humility to take the techniques you learned from that master chef, the discipline, the understanding of flavor balance, the work ethic.
But having the courage to use those tools to bake the pastry that you actually want to eat.
Yes. You use their universal tools to construct your highly specific building.
You can use the world's accumulated knowledge. You can study the templates to learn how the game of life is played. But you must be the one who determines the ultimate objective of the game.
Exactly.
If you want to bake pastries, stop cooking the damn risotto just because your peers think it makes you look sophisticated.
That is the hardest work a human being can undertake.
It really is.
It is infinitely easier and socially safer to just follow the recipe provided by the herd.
But as the first half of the quote reminds us, the temporal budget is strictly capped.
The clock is ticking.
Every single day you spend cooking a meal you resent is a day you can never, ever get back.
The transaction is final, no refunds.
This has been an absolutely mind-bending journey.
It went to some deep places.
We took 14 words, a tiny philosophical zip file, and expanded it into a comprehensive audit of how we spend our lives.
A full operating system.
Let's synthesize this to see how we can actually use it today.
We covered a vast amount of psychological and practical territory.
We started by confronting the ultimate boundary condition, the strict limitation of our time.
Yes.
But we reframed that limitation. We realized it isn't a ticking bomb designed to cause panic. It is a temporal budget designed to force clarity,
It demands intentional investment over impulsive spending.
which naturally shifted our perspective from the anxiety of seeking efficiency to the profound peace of practicing effectiveness.
We moved from doing things faster to ruthlessly eliminating the wrong things.
Then we examined the hinge of the framework, the definition of waste.
The active waste.
Right. We uncovered that true waste is rarely passive laziness. The most dangerous, insidious waste is highly active.
It is the illusion of productivity while meticulously optimizing for an environment you don't even want to live in.
Building the car for the roadless island.
The tragedy of a misallocated identity, driven by the biological urge to conform to the herd.
And finally, we concluded that the ultimate time-saving strategy, the only real way to protect your limited temporal budget, is the courageous, unapologetic pursuit of your own uniquely defined goals.
It requires stepping off the corporate escalators,
Discarding the familial blueprints,
surviving the friction of social misunderstanding,
and learning to bake your own pastry.
a rigorous daily internal audit.
So before you finish your commute or your workout or whatever you're doing right now, I want you to take this quote off the inspirational poster and install it in your mental toolkit.
Put it to work.
Tomorrow morning, when someone asks you to take on a new project that feels misaligned, or when you feel that creeping peer pressure to buy a certain thing just to impress people you don't even genuinely run it through this 14-word filter,
Ask the hard questions.
ask yourself, is this a good investment of my strictly capped temporal budget? Or am I about to actively waste my time cooking a meal I am allergic to just to appease the herd?
It is a diagnostic question that requires constant vigilant asking.
Because it's not a one-and-done thing.
No, because the gravitational pull toward the template is always acting upon us. The desire for the safety of the herd never fully disappears.
It is a lifelong practice of course correction.
Yeah.
But before we wrap up, I know you always have one last curveball for us.
I do like to leave a lingering question.
We have spent an hour dissecting how to escape the trap of living someone else's life. What is the final provocative thought you want to leave us with? Something to mull over as we go about spending the rest of our limited budget today.
Well, consider this complication.
Okay.
We have spent all this time talking about avoiding the trap of copying your parents or your peers or the corporate templates.
Right.
But let's say you actually do the hard work. You step off the path of others. You brave the emotional friction. You ignore the cortisol spikes. And you successfully carve your own entirely unique route.
You build a life that is authentically yours.
The ultimate victory.
Right.
But human beings are not static creatures.
We evolve.
Exactly. The goals you authentically, genuinely set for yourself at 25 might not belong to the person you become at 40.
Oh, interesting.
Your values shift. Your perspective deepens. So the final terrifying question is this. How do you ensure that the you making those choices today isn't just a slightly older version of yourself that you are now blindly copying?
Oh, wow. Wait, so the template can come from inside the house?
Exactly.
That is wild.
When you finally escape society's templates, how do you ensure you aren't eventually trapped living the life of your past self?
How do you ensure that the authentic goals of a decade ago haven't slowly calcified into a new self-imposed prison.
That's the danger.
That is going to keep me staring at the ceiling
Me
tonight.
too.
You do all the excruciating work to escape the expectations of everyone else, only to realize you are now conforming to the expectations of the person you used to be.
You have to be willing to disappoint your past self to serve your present self.
Which means the internal audit truly never ends.
It never ends. The temporal budget demands constant reassessment.
It never ends. You constantly have to reevaluate the architecture of your life.
Every single day.
Check your engines, check your temporal budgets, and please don't waste your limited hours living someone else's life, not even the life of the person you were yesterday.
Well said.
Keep unpacking the data. We'll see you next time.